And then about half of all here, this is for research. Yay! I in the snow. It's almost like flying in clouds or something. Get up under the ground and saves.
Are we ready? Okay. Good morning. I'd like to open the workshop for the Klickitat County Commissioners. The records show all three commissioners are in-house today. And I guess we're going to start with Economic Development, Richard Foster. And Chelsea, thank you so much.
Good morning, commissioners.
Thank you. Good morning.
So do you guys have the integrated planning grant, the breakdown? Okay, perfect. Well, so on the
you're asking all three of us, I don't know.
We're good.
All right. So basically today is just to discuss specifically what we want and then move forward. We had some questions this last time on this and moving some things around. So the blue was what we originally had. And we broke it down by price all the way through. We broke it down by price. So basically the question is, what do y'all want? If I may approach the board real quick. This is what I'm recommending is this is what was done before. What Ecology had suggested, which was like the stakeholder engagement, surveys, interviews. We can do that. That was only going to be $6,000. The ones I would recommend is the either the economic impact model or developing policy recommendations. Each of those are $10,000 a pop. And I'm not sure if we need to do the GIS analysis at $4,000, but that could be used for the site plans to above that for 15,000. So maybe that's why Ecology put that in there. But certainly right now we're at everything in blue that Ecology suggested is at $75,000. If we take out the stakeholder interviews and the community engagement stuff, and we do that in-house, that puts us at $69,000. So we could do either the economic, I would suggest either the policy recommendations or the economic impact model. And then that would put us at about $79,000 with a $6,000 contingency.
What would be included in the policy recommendations? What are you talking about?
So that, okay, I'm going to go.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so for the policy recommendations, because there has been some ideas that have circulated, we've already done, I want to say 3 community engagements out there at the Klickitat Mill site. And so a lot of ideas have already been out there. So the policy recommendations would be, if you're going to subdivide the property, what is that going to look like? If there's going to be potentially like a salmon habitat restoration project on Snyder Creek, you know, what would that look like? And how would that how would that engage on the, if there's a developable portion of the property, what would that look like? I mean, it's going to answer a lot of those questions. And same thing is I would also argue, if there is contamination on the site, what are some things that we could do as a county from Ecology's perspective?
Okay. So then can you give an overview of the conceptual economic impact model and how that would go if we don't have a desired path yet?
So the economic impact model that's on here, it's a conceptual economic impact model. Basically what that's going to look like is, with most economic impact models, is if you have a solid path forward, they would basically say this is how many direct jobs would be provided, how many indirect jobs would be provided, as well as how many induced jobs. So the 3 types for most economic impact models that they have is going to be direct, indirect, and induced. So to clarify, indirect is like, and induced is going to be, you know, how many more barbers do you need that's going to help with the direct jobs, you know, extra grocery store employees, you know, food trucks, whatever, anything that basically gets their wages based off the direct employees.
How do you figure that out with without knowing how many parcels, how do you subdivide, what you can do on the property.
Mhm.
So that would be among the last things that we would do, would be the economic impact model as we go through this process. But
Wouldn't you need to do the policy recommendation thing before you even do that?
I would recommend we do the policy recommendation, yeah.
But
there's two, yeah.
Now be barged up.
Yeah. But there's two things, those are the two that I recommend, either or. I mean, I'm indifferent on how we move forward, but if there was an RV, like if we turn that into a campground, for instance, like an RV, like how many direct draws would that provide? How many indirect and induced draws would that provide? What would those wages look like? Would it be full-time? Would they be part-time? That's what most economic impact models would be. This one is only $10,000. Economic impact models can get incredibly expensive. This one would be very surface.
On my question, I have not heard this county say that it wants to own a county operated RV park. So why would we spend money looking at an economic impact study of a county owned RV park? I don't understand that.
So that was one of the ideas that was brought up at the committee.
Right, but that was a private idea.
Yeah.
That would be done on, hopefully at the time, private property.
A question on this contract, are these line items, it's $10,000, or is this time and materials?
These are just line items on what each task would cost approximately.
It would be the upper end of that task limit for getting to that point, but you're gonna have that many different tasks in the.
Each one of these would be broken down.
It'll all go into like one
contract. Yes. But it'll have each task, this is how much you can, up to this amount can be spent on it.
No, it is a general.
General.
Yes. So if we decided.
These are estimates.
Yes, and if we decided that we didn't, like, right now there's $3,000 for community engagement. If we didn't want to use the $3,000 for community engagement, we would put it someplace else and use it. So it's just
so these were just estimates from them on how much each of these would cost in order to do. Okay.
So for me, for talking points going forward, this was a menu we could choose from, but I think to clarify, it might be better to start talking in terms of what is your number one priority off of this list. And for me, looking at development policy and recommendations, that helps us get to the next steps. And if the other steps are steps we choose, then the conceptual economic impact study may end up number 4 or number 5. It may be something we choose, but as long as we know the working order and we can say there's value and okay, let's pick that number 1, let's do that step number 2, then we know everything's flowing. My second question was on that bathymetric in water habitat surveys. I don't want to recreate the wheel. If Yakima Nation is doing extensive things there with everything they're doing and we're spending salmon recovery money there, I don't want to redo surveys that we don't need to do. But if we can pull in their information, that's great.
Okay. And I'm going to guess, because there's already been boundary and topographic surveys that have been done out there. So cross that one out.
Has there been boundary line surveys that if we go to sell or subdivide properties, we're not going to have to go do a boundary line survey before we can do that?
Well, we haven't done that.
And
that's my point. So I'm saying if there's talk, which I believe there currently is, of potentially subdividing, it might be wise to get them to do the boundary survey. I mean, just for me anyway, on 1 of 3.
And I think that that's going to have to wait on ecology studies too, because we're going to have setbacks potentially from certain things. So we will have to have boundary line delineation of where we can be and where we can't be.
I guess for me, I understand the stakeholder stuff there. I just think we can do it in-house cheaper.
Yeah. So
I am not terribly interested in the economic impact model until we're far later along in the process. The policy recommendations should come first. So of what you don't have outlined there, I agree with the policy recommendations, but I would like to see not necessarily topographical survey, because I don't need that in order to subdivide, but I definitely do need somebody out there with a tape measure, hammering in markers so we know where things are.
I think from my perspective, there's two separate tracks here. First track is what is the regulations on what we can do based on, you know, what happens when we drill holes and find out if there's anything else, and making sure that we have a clean slate that we can go and do whatever we want. And then it's still, cleanup is still set at industrial levels. And the question is when we do these surveys, you know, and tests, the question is can we then petition ecology so that it is not at an industrial level? It could be commercial, because that opens up the availability of what we can do on the properties. And we need to get those answers done as soon as possible, so that then we can start doing the rest of this. And then everything else, I think, is in a logical, rational flow of, okay, now we know that we can do more than just industrial. We can do commercial on this. We've got 3 stakeholder meetings. We can do more stakeholder meetings. And then from those stakeholder meetings, you know, these group that comes in is going to, I guess, facilitate a little bit on what then becomes our policy recommendations. Do we want to try to keep this as one thing? Do we want to potentially subdivide it? And then as you go from there, then you start, and I don't know if we want, I mean, they're going to hire out a survey crew. We could ask the Public Works to potentially do surveys, you know, and do more in-house if that's a possibility, and timing for our guys. I don't think we need to do a building condition assessment. I think we already know what that is. And then once we get to the point of this is what the community wants, then we can bring them on to help with the funding strategies, potentially, of whatever's going to happen, or if we're just going to sell it. We don't need that. You know, we need to think about this as a logical flow. Some of these things we might even need, because if the goal is for just us to dispose of the property, so that the private sector can manage it, well, then the economic impact research and evaluations, what are you doing with that? Because you don't have control over it. And so I could see an $80,000 project, you know, I just don't want to get them too far ahead of where we are. You know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Do we have to pinpoint these or answer these questions to apply for that money from ecology? Is that where you're?
Yeah, that's why
Yeah.
I'm here.
Okay.
So we're going to include this. I think we could probably do an amendment if we wanted to include something later. But if we start off at the top, the review of reports and technical documents related to the site assessment process, that's $2,000. Ecology is going to need that. The technical communication between ecology, all contractors and liable parties and everything for $5,000, that's going to be needed. They're suggesting the economic impact research and evaluations for $15,000, but that would be towards the end of this project from a timeline perspective. I mean, we can take that out. Right now, everything in blue is at $75,000, but I'll just go down the line. The conceptual economic impact model, another $10,000. Right-of-way analysis, site configuration, $10,000. Conceptual site plan, $15,000. Building condition assessment, $5,000. GIS analysis, $4,000. Boundary and topographic survey, $7,500. Bathymetric and in-water habitat survey, $10,000. Stakeholder interviews, $3,000. Community engagement, $3,000. Development funding strategies, $10,000. Regulatory assessment, $8,000. And then develop policy recommendations, $10,000. So more specifically, out of everything in blue, I can take out right now, everything in blue is $75,000. If we take out the stakeholder interviews and community engagement, that puts us at $69,000. Our limit on this is $85,000.
Okay.
And so if we include just keeping everything in blue, taking out the stakeholder interviews and community engagement, that puts us down to $69,000. I can add develop policy recommendations for $10,000, which is going to put us at $79,000. So right now it's $79,000 with zero contingency on these cost estimates. I can, if we have enough money, I can always try to include boundary and topographic survey, or maybe I try and put in boundary.
I say, can we list that as alternative number one if there's extra money or something?
Yep.
Kind of thing.
I can take a look into that.
You know what I mean? Kind of explain it to them. We kind of want to do this, but there's no money. But if some of these other things run cheaper, we'd like to move on to alternative number 1 and alternative number 2. And so it's listed, just not funded currently.
So I guess how I've always thought of it, you've got your task budget on the bottom of the page. And so that'll be your tasks in the grant with ecology. And then it'll just say integrated planning, and that'll be a task. And then underneath it, you can list, these things on, the things that are on here, but not as requirements that you have to complete all of these things. That's what I don't want to have. I don't want, because one of these things could easily become $50,000 if you jump into it. So I want to make it so that, the goal, under the integrated planning, the outcomes are not these things. These are not the outcomes. The outcome is a plan to move forward with the parcel that can be either subdivided, sold, or whatever else. And then inside it, so I'm thinking of it, there's the contract with ecology, but then there's also the agreement with ecology. Then there's the contract with the individual company. And on that contract with the individual company, we should have our own sets of task items going down through there that allows us to be maneuverable based on the results of the remedial investigations, so that we can be nimble. I just don't box us in and don't set deliverables that we might not be able to meet.
Yeah, so this will all be whatever we choose to do is going to be written into one report, and we have $85,000 to do that. So if you choose your top 4 must get dones, anything else can be added in without having to have a deliverable for ecology. So that can simplify it too.
Great. Any other questions?
Okay, so we will include the developed policy recommendations, take out the stakeholder and community engagement stuff. Everything else is fine.
You can have it in there, but you can also, like, for the integrated planning, because you have to do that as part of integrated planning. So you would include it in the agreement with, or the agreement with ecology. You just wouldn't include that in the contract with the contractor.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because whether we're doing it or someone else is doing it, we need it in the agreement so that we can get reimbursed for it. For your time, the 3 of you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm tracking. There's going to be 2 sets of contracts.
Yeah.
With a subrecipient. Well, that was very informative. So I think we got a really good path forward. So thank you.
Yeah, I think you're able to go now.
All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Clayton.
Yeah. Yeah. He's so wordy.
I was teasing that they can't get a word in edgewise with him in the room. So
Thank you for being in the room early, Heather.
Yes, I believe you also own that property as tax title, not as county property outright. So you might want to talk with the treasurer about whether or not there are restrictions on what you can and can't do before you move too far down a continuum that you can't get back. It's just my 2 cents on that one. So
Words of wisdom.
That was, I think, those discussions started, what, 3 years ago?
yeah.
Or 10
Before these discussions started.
Long time ago, we started those discussions about making sure that it's county property and getting it.
1986.
I thought it was 94 starters.
Well, 86, I think the mill left finally. So I go from that clock. Last load of logs. So.
all right. So with regard to the coroner, I think that there are 2 issues. There are timing and then a decision as to how you want to treat the issue. So my opinion and the PA's opinion differ, but particularly if we're going with the ballot path.
Is this opinion? Is it legal opinion, policy opinion? What kind of an opinion?
He disagrees with my opinion. I don't have, he didn't provide me with any reasoning as to why. So I don't know.
Did you submit an official PA opinion?
I did.
And you haven't got a response?
I got a response that he disagrees with my opinion.
Can we get a copy of it?
Sure.
Thank you.
So timing wise, to address that issue first, We currently fall under RCW 3616.030, which changes as of January 1, 2025. How it currently reads is that counties with populations less than 40,000, there is no elected coroner. The PA serves as the coroner. So as far as I'm concerned, there is no vacancy until January 1, 2025, when the RCW changes. So it can't go on the ballot before January 2025, should you choose to go with the elected option. The county commission or the county coroner position is a partisan position, which would put it on a normally run election in 2026. But the 3616.110.1 allows for elections to fill a vacancy in the non-normal election cycle. So as far as I'm concerned, if we go down the elected path, the board would declare a vacancy as of January 1 and would appoint somebody to fill that vacancy. The individual would then be on the ballot in the general election, potentially the primary election of 2025, depending on how many people file for that position, and would run an unexpired term. So they would have to rerun in 2026, and then they'd have a regular 4-year election cycle.
Okay.
Why would the 2025 election to fill an unexpired term only be 1 year? Why wouldn't they go?
Because it's the balance of the term. It's an unexpired term.
Right, but why
Because
wouldn't they go to the next general election instead of midterm? Why wouldn't it be 3 years after the 2020?
Because the regular cycle would be 26. So first time that they would regularly appear on the ballot would be in 2026 for a 4-year cycle. They'd run the same cycle as the auditor, the treasurer, the prosecutor, etc. So they would be on the ballot in 2026. The RCW allows you to put them on the ballot earlier in 2025 to fill what would be an unexpired term.
So we do not have the choice because of calendar and timing to put them on a presidential year election as opposed to the midterm election. It has to be the midterm election.
Correct. I will not put it on the ballot this year because no vacancy exists. There is no legal authority to put it on the ballot.
Okay.
Now, the Secretary of State's office concurs with my opinion. So barring a change in
all the other
RCW
that are dealing with this issue right now are all having the same issue.
I don't believe a whole lot of them are actually discussing it. Now, I would agree with the prosecutor that you can't kick this can any further. If you wait until January 1 to make a decision about how you're going to handle it, it puts you behind the 8 ball even further. So I would recommend that you make a decision.
I've already made a decision.
So that come January 1, you're ready to move on this, but it won't go on the ballot this year.
Can we get a copy of the Secretary of State's agreement that that's the way? Because it seems like we have the prosecuting attorney who represents the county has a disagreement with you over whether or not we can put it on the ballot. And that creates conflict for us. 2 electeds saying 2 different things. If the Secretary of State and all the other counties are doing it the same way, then it makes.
I don't know how all the other counties are doing.
I guess so. My issue would be is if another county, like another small county that's in our boat, is putting it on the ballot, everything else is the same, and they're going to put it on the ballot this year. Then
are you aware of any counties doing that?
That's what I'm going to check next week to make sure, to find out. But I just don't want to create conflict. And I also don't want to, if we have the option to elect somebody versus appointing someone, I always want to choose the option in which the public gets to say. So if you can provide the information from the PA opinion and the Secretary of State in writing so that we can make the most informed decision.
And then,
well, that relates to timing, but not as to whether you appoint, elect, or contract out. So you've got two different issues here. You have to make a decision about how you want to handle it because you do have to handle it as of January 1, 2025.
Right.
So that's one piece. And then the timing of how we administratively handle whatever your decision is a separate piece.
So for me, it sounds like no matter what's happening here, we need to move forward with coroner for several reasons. And it looks as though the only thing we can do right now is appoint until we find out other timings and how to move forward with an election type if we move that into election. But no matter what we do, we have to go with appointed at this point. Or we won't be in place for the 25th to.
You would have a vacancy as of January 1 because the PA, right now you don't have a vacancy. The PA is the coroner until midnight on December 31st. So
we need to cure that.
So you need to be ready to go at your first regular meeting in January to fill that vacancy. The only way to fill that vacancy, if you're going down the elected path, is to appoint somebody. If you're appointing somebody rather than appointing as an interim into an election, you would appoint at that time.
I think we need to change that term from appoint to create a department that is appointed by the BoCC versus an elected appointment, just to make it. You understand the difference?
Yes,
but the RCW uses the term appoint. You appoint somebody to fill the vacancy.
We won't be hiring a director.
That's what I'm saying.
I think I'd like to clarify too. We've had differences on the board about appointed versus elected. And I stood on appointed. I know Mr. Christopher
stood on
elected. And Mr. Anderson, did we finalize a formal vote that the BOC was going to move forward because we had to?
No, we didn't, because I believe you were talking to the prosecutor about what we can and can't do.
With regard to timing, should you go down the elected path, what does that look like from a timing standpoint? I'm telling you, if you go down the elected path, it doesn't go on the ballot until 2025. So you would have to appoint somebody in the interim until we could conduct an election.
How would that work? You've got, it becomes open in January 1 of 2025. The board would appoint someone after the opening. So it would be the next board that would appoint someone for the elected position. You couldn't do it before they take the position, right? It has to be open before you appoint it. You see, it's a weird thing because we're creating something out of thin air.
Yeah.
If you go down the elected route, the RCW says you can appoint as soon as there's a vacancy. There's not a vacancy.
It's not going to be January 1 because technically there's not a vacancy until January 21 or January 1. So if it is an appointment, it would be my understanding that January 1 starts the clock for the Republican Party. But is it the Republican Party? Because appointments, you get 3 names from the party.
Yeah.
We don't know if it's a Democrat Party or Republican Party because we're not replacing anybody.
Correct.
So who gets to choose the 3 names?
The board would appoint somebody.
We don't have to reach out to either party to get names. Normally it's the party that presents the names to the board.
It is the party that the person who's left the vacancy. We don't have anybody leaving the vacancy.
So we'd need to make sure legally that it's just us and it's not a party or a.
Well,
I guess technically we do have somebody who's leaving the vacancy and they are of a certain party. The coroner is.
He has no party preference is how he runs. He declares no party preference.
Okay.
So how would go through the appointment?
There was the legislative thing that just went through about the appointment process for independents and who picks the 3 names. So we'll have to check into that.
And I will tell you that when Kim Wyman, who was a Republican, left the Secretary of State's office, Governor Inslee appointed a Democrat. So, just because a Republican or an independent or a Democrat was in the office doesn't.
Well, they're at a little higher threshold for getting in trouble with.
So now we come down to the point then this board.
So I guess I have one for elect, I have one for appoint. I'm always trying to find the middle ground. My thought would be either way, where the new board will be appointing someone. You only get to go one direction. You get to go from, an office position, an office director position to an elected. It would be very difficult to ever go from elected back to the other way. Because the board is going to be appointing somebody on the first of the year. My thought would be is to meet in the middle. We would do a director position in January to get the program up and running, working with the board because it's a brand new, a whole new program, and then with the goal of moving that to an elected position for the 26. It gives the board a little bit of, because either way, it's
That's
getting
what makes
weird,
sense to me.
with not having a Republican or a Democrat and however that works out. So my thought would be is you would set it up as a department for, in essence, a year and a half with the plan of moving to elected in 2026. And then that department director position would then roll over as an elected. And then that way it still gives the board the time to work through the budget and how it's built for that first year.
Yeah, and I'm not recommending one solution over the other. That's your decision. I'm simply providing procedural information.
My thought on the other part of that is it deals with the discrepancy between you and the prosecutor in that instance. Just as an option, a third option for the three.
And that procedure is what I was kicking around my head from what Heather had told us. That's what I felt like the procedure would probably have to be because of timing and the new board and January 1st and everything happening. That seemed logical to me. And it also gives us a little bit of wiggle room time to work on where it's going, how it's going, budgets.
So if it is, so I just want to make sure though, with your understanding of it, could you still then move from that way of doing it into a regular election in 2026? Or does that cause another hoopla with the same issue we have now because it's
moving from an appointed position to
an elected
position? I don't see why it would, but I haven't researched that. The RCW, the legislature in all of its wisdom, took out a whole lot of the instruction of how to fill the position and the timing and procedural aspects of it when they rewrote it. I have talked to at least one representative who would be willing to do a cleanup bill if somebody wanted to run along that line to maybe answer some of these questions.
Wouldn't happen this year.
No, it wouldn't happen this year. But anyway, okay. I don't know.
Mr. Christopher, is there anything you?
Well, it sounds like the two board members are in agreement. I don't know if that's 100% correct or not, but that's what I'm hearing. I would just like this opportunity on this day, on this recording, to voice my concerns that while I do believe we would be able to easily find someone to appoint, I don't believe we're going to find a single soul that wants to work for this board. And so come January 1st, with whatever board is sitting here, if you're starting to go months without a coroner because you can't fill the position, that gets very scary to me. And we've already got opinion from the prosecutor that he does not believe we're going to find somebody to be a director because they don't want to work for us. So that is my concern. I've aired it, and if the board chooses to go the opposite direction, the board can choose to go the opposite direction.
Well, and I have to say on a positive note, I've had good feedback, and there are at least two well-qualified people that would be willing to step up. So I have hope that just like everything else that's going well, like the planning department and other departments where we're hiring very qualified people, there's interested people. So that makes me happy. And it sounds like that process is the process you have to follow anyhow for an appointed, and then help us get to the elected if that's where we go. So kind of a no-brainer.
I guess from my perspective, just if I may, Madam Chair, I would be in favor if we could run an election this year and making an elected position. But hearing from the auditor and the auditor having the backup from the state, which I want to see that in writing, then that changes that decision, because then no matter what, you're appointing someone. And knowing that it can go that way. My end goal, of course, is to have it be an elected position. It's just, if we could find a way to put it on the ballot this year, I would definitely go that direction. And I would
If
also,
the PA believes that there's an error on the ballot, he can always take the issue to Superior Court and get the court to weigh in on that. And if I have a court order saying put it on this year's ballot, I'll put it on this year's ballot. But barring that or a change,
you won't put it on the ballot. No matter
I
what.
won't put it on the ballot because I don't believe it's properly on the ballot.
Nothing is simple, is it?
No, but it is pretty simple. I mean, it's going to take a little longer maybe, but I think sometimes longer is better. We can work our way through.
Personally, if he takes it to Superior Court.
So, clarification then. Have we made a decision? Does there need to be a motion? Because now it sounds like you're leaning that direction, but you need the more information to be officially that direction.
I'm trying to be very clear with my goal. My goal is to have this be an elected position that the voters get to vote on. The answer is, though, from our auditor that they won't put it on the ballot. So I'm trying to find a happy middle ground in order to get us to that point in the future, knowing that this is a transition stage.
So again, you'd need to make a decision about the path you choose to follow. And if you think that there's a chance that it would go on this year's ballot, filing week is in May. So, you'd have to get through the whole procedural process with.
Right. And that's all I'm
trying to get prior to that
is an actual official decision. I thought we just had one, and I would say that if we ever are going to have one, it might be nice to make a motion in a second so it's perfectly crystal clear that there's actually a decision and not more thinking that needs to be done.
Well, technically, you would hope that there's a resolution and a whole bunch of other stuff that goes along with it.
Yeah. Well, and with what Heather's presented, I would like to support our auditor and support both of our electeds and not throw some kind of sticky wicket of opinion between each other. Sounds like we have a clear path that we can get to elected. And I'm willing to say, yes, appointed seems the way to do it to me, but for right now, appointed is what we can do so we can cure our situation on January 1st. Then moving through that year towards knowing it would be an elected position because there are two that would prefer it to be elected. We have that time and that grace to work on that. And then we're not pitting electeds against each other.
So by appointed, you mean creating the department?
Correct.
Okay, that's
correct.
That's our appointed word gets it.
Creating the department, moving forward, filling that gap with the idea that we would move towards an elected unless something goes insanely wrong and we say it needs to stay a department. It's great as an appointed. We're not going to put it on the ballot, but it gives it the proving ground to get it up and running and moving, and then it can find its path and move forward then with the idea that both of you do want it elected. So that's where it would move.
So not necessarily where it would move, because it would be up to whoever's sitting here next year on which direction.
But if they have the advice from this board, I'm sure they would reason it and look at it and say that's what's on the record, that this is what these commissioners wanted.
You are very correct, Commissioner Christopher, that the future board could decide to make it an elected position. They could also decide to keep it underneath it, as a department.
And they can also decide to make an appointment on January 1st and undo everything this board set up, it being as a department. Because they control the show on January 1st. They can choose, nope, we're not doing it the direct department way. We're going to do it the appointment way. and
If,
they can appoint on January 1st.
if we're going to have these what if discussions, then perhaps we shouldn't have this discussion with this board at all. Is there a way to set it up that it's presented to the new board and say, hey, what do you think? And let them just go from there? I mean, are we wasting our time here?
It's not, she runs elections. You talk to her when you want to put something on a ballot.
Right.
Everything else is policy decision up here.
Okay.
But just like the solar issue, the last board had one opinion of solar. The next board didn't have that opinion of solar. Nothing, Commissioner Sauter is famous for saying, nothing done by this board can't be undone by the next.
So I'm willing to mitigate and say, stay common ground, do the sensible thing, move forward, do the appointed, fill the gap so everybody knows we're moving forward, and give the best advice to whoever's on the next board to say, this is what these commissioners saw coming and they would like to do the appointed, so we fill the gap. They would like to explore moving that to the 2026 election. And then it is up to that board, no matter what we say here today, to say, sure, we support what they say. And we've done our due diligence to at least fill that gap. But we can't live with what if and banter this around for the next 6 months. We have to come to a conclusion of what we're going to stand on, or else just drop it all today and not have these long-winded conversations and say, let's just hand it to the next board then. If we don't feel we're going to have anything to say, that next board's going to say it, then what is there to talk about?
I appreciate the thought process of this. You know, this is when you're trying to piece things together. This is great. If we were, and I'm just thinking ahead, if we decide that we want this to be a department position, we know that it's opening on January 1. We don't want to have no coroner in the county over a period of time. So if what I see it as is with this way of doing it, we can go through the process for creating the department this year. We can go through the process for setting the budget this year. We can actually interview, and if we would like, this board could choose to hire someone to start January 1 so that there is no gap. You're correct, Commissioner. January 1, the new Board of Commissioners could come in and say, nope, we're abolishing the department. We're going to make it an elected position and we want to appoint somebody.
That's not what I said, sir.
Well, they could make changes.
They wouldn't abolish
An
the
elected
department.
position still needs a department. So, I mean, either way, you have to create, my office is a department, whether you call it an office or a department. So, you know, you still have to create.
Right. And even if we were going to go with an appointment or an elected or however that process worked, I would certainly hope the board would still budget it, provide the office space, have the furniture in it, figure out how many FTEs we're going to be budgeted for. You're still creating all of the other stuff, even if you are appointed or if you're hiring. Either way, you're still creating the rest. Well, I hope you were. But nothing that, I'm just saying that nothing we do can't be undone by the next board. If the next board feels, no, I don't like the director that's hired by the county, I believe the person should be accountable to the voters when they make bad decisions on cause of death. Then they can change it in a heartbeat.
I'm not disagreeing with you.
And that's all I'm saying for clarification. I'm not saying kick it down the road. I'm not saying don't set up a department. I'm just going on the record to say that I believe it needs to be an elected position, and that is my vote today and will always be my vote. If this board wants to set it up as a department, that's fine. I will more than happily weigh in with my opinion of how many deaths they need and how many FTE they need based on if it ever turns into an elected. So I don't think we need to kick the can down the road.
The other thing that I think that there's other pieces to this, right? One of those is Skamania County. And if we go the way that we're talking about doing it as an interim step, that gives us the opportunity to potentially contract with Skamania County or Skamania County to contract with us so that we can have one, in essence, kind of like how we contract out all of our subs now. Or sorry, not subs. I apologize, Prosecutor Cannell. The appointed deputy prosecutors. That could be a possibility in which it could save the county a couple $100,000 a year.
I believe we got a budget analysis that if we shared the position with Skamania County, and I'll have to go back and watch the video for clarification, that it would actually cost more money according to our budget analysis. It would cost more total money over for, you know, if you do the whole thing, but then you get to divide it by 2 because 2 different counties. Wasn't my understanding of the video, but okay.
If we move forward with creating the department, which sounds like the Board of County Commissioners needs to do that, those will be things we can explore.
Yeah.
With all of those, there's a lot of items that are going to crop up in creating a whole department. So, but it sounds like we're in agreement that we know what the process is and that we do need to do our due diligence during our time here this year to create that department.
Yes, but then the next question would be is how big a department, how many desks, how many employees, based off whether you're serving the needs of Skamania County or if you're only serving the needs of Klickitat County, because that will be another discussion.
We've had a lot of discussions that we'll have to come back into creating that department for sure.
And I also, before I make a motion or anything, as I stated, I'd like to see the PA opinion request, as well as what the state auditor.
Did I email that to you? Okay.
And so if we were to change direction based on conversations with the prosecuting attorney, state office, and somehow able to put it on the ballot, what is the drop dead date you need to know if we were to be able to put it on the ballot this year?
Before filing week in May.
Before filing week. Okay. We'll get back to more work.
Right, but I would hope the sooner the better, because anybody that may run for that position, it'd be nice to give them some notice that there's actually going to be something to run for.
I generally recommend that the board make decisions sooner rather than later, but that's just
my decision is on the record.
Just my opinion.
And I try not to make decisions until I've seen all the facts.
That's totally reasonable. We kick cans a lot around here, so.
We do.
So waiting on information.
Yep.
As soon as I get back to my office, I will forward you my correspondence with the Secretary of State's office and the PA's email indicating he disagreed with my opinion. But I did just give Alyssa the PA request, so
okay.
We will have that.
Thank you. Thank you for being a part of the policy discussion, as well as, you know, how to actually get it through. And I appreciate all of your insight.
You are most welcome.
And going forward I'm sorry, Heather, thank you for everything. Going forward for us, I think keeping in the back of your mind and bringing it back to this board about how we'd like to move forward with discussions on creating that.
That's definitely needs to be on workshops.
Okay. Whatever you need to bring in or have discussions and start setting those up for timelines and stuff.
Anything else?
Nope. Okay. You're good. Thank you. Thank you, Heather.
You're welcome.
So moving on to WSUs. I think we landed last week on some extensive ag services, soil services, and also the Master Gardener program was important to have with our 4-H.
And I also forwarded you this morning a email from Maria Anderson in regards to the Parks and Rec, how they have their community garden and how the Master Garden that program would benefit them.
This is the community Goldendale Garden.
Yes.
And then I think we had discussions about Harley. There were questions about her budget and what we could do to move forward with that for suggestions.
Correct.
So, we did not hear back, I don't think, on.
No, Harley thinks that she is not involved with her budget.
Okay.
gets kind of out of code.
Okay. Okay.
We do have Jen online.
Okay.
If we have questions about that.
That'd be great.
So Jen is on.
Can we pause for a second while I go grab the budget book?
Sure. We're going to take a second.
I'm sorry, I was kind of under the impression that Jen and Harley would be here with recommendations, so I'm kind of backpedaling to find the numbers myself.
Do we know, are there any master gardeners left in the county? Because I know
Still living here. Yeah.
living in the county because I think the Dalles has a master gardener
Yeah.
program, and I don't know if they're a part of it or.
Let me reach out to Linda Williams. I believe she ran that program before for us.
Okay.
And I know there's a few in White Salmon.
Madam Chair.
Problem. So I think our questions for today were only, we will submit our preferences to WSU for them to work up what they have to offer and how they would offer it. And along with that, if we have any suggestions that we'd like to change for 4-H is what we would need to submit. Those would be the answers I need today.
You're not looking for numbers that if we want to add some actual funding for
yes, if
WSU into the contract?
Yes, if that was your suggestion that you would like to up a budget somewhere and we have those funds available that we could rearrange the funds or put more in one slot or the other slot. The way I understood going in, we were staying at the budget that we had. We weren't going to reduce anything, but it's just how you choose to. Go ahead.
Mike Gaffney would be the contact in regards to the budget.
Right. And is he online today?
Currently, we essentially said $100,000 over here. We have nothing on bars numbers. They can't charge anything to bars numbers. Eventually, there's going to have to be bars numbers. Okay. There's going to have to be dollars allocated, just like this budget page, where professional services get 74,000, communications is 1,800, travel is 3,000. That's how it's going to have to be set up. The problem is this current setup is for 2 employees.
Correct.
We're only now having 1, or not even employees, but 2 contractors. We're now having 1. So I wanted to know how much of, let's say travel at 3,000. Well, I'm looking at the preliminary, not the, actually I'm looking at the final. How much of that was Harley using for travel and how much was Hannah using for travel? That's what I was hoping to get out of this discussion today, is so that we can come down and say, you know, out of this $1,864 communication, how much does Harley need? Well, you know, she says 500, great, let's give her 600.
Okay.
You know, kind of scenario. And then we can set up that bars number. How much does she need for travel? You know, kind of scenario. WSU says they pay for all travel outside the county. They only need travel inside the county. Great. So is that $1,000? Is that a good number? Great. Let's put it on the bars number. So that she actually has some funding to buy pens and paper and ink and the things she needs in the bars numbers. Jen has a hand up.
Jen, good morning.
Good morning. I just want to make some clarification. There is $100,000 in that budget. It is on a single budget line item instead of itemized out, but that does not mean that she cannot spend out of those additional bars numbers. So there is a total budget amount of $100,000 in that budget, and dollars can be spent out of line items within the operating budget up to $100,000.
Right, but when we set the 100,000, okay, so here's the problem with doing nothing. When we set the $100,000 aside, that was 2 contractors and all of the gas and travel and everything else for 2 contractors. We know that's not going to be the case going forward. We also know new things like we shouldn't be covering travel because WSU already covers it. So my worry is if we just leave the number at 100,000, you could technically be spending more than you did before because one employee could be spending 10,000 in travel because if the money's in there.
Yes, and yes, that is correct. Now, if you're wanting to reduce the budget, then yeah, that's definitely a topic for conversation. And can be worked through. None of these changes can be made until May, though, through the first supplemental either.
Well, in my mind, thinking about how budget is distributed, they are under the purview of WSU. It may be beneficial to us to submit to Mr. Gaffney that these are the choices we've made, plus Harley's valuable for the program they've been offering. Let them draft a preliminary contract showing us what they would use our money for and how they would apply it. And then if we could make any adjustments, additions or subtractions out of what they see they're offering us for that amount of money. I think we're kind of talking blind without having them do that.
So is your answer to essentially have them, I guess I'd say, make a budget request? This is what we would like to see WSU have for these items.
I'm saying if we have what Klickitat County has offered WSU to provide services, if they draft the new preliminary contract, it's going to say what services they provide for what amount of money. And then we could go from there. Because we don't know how they want to divide or allot out that time of their employees or what they're going to offer us for that money. We're assuming they're going to preserve Harley and we can adjust her work or say what she needs to do, but that's really up to WSU. We've bumped up against that before, not being able to tell their employees what they're doing because they're their employees. We're offering to help pay for it. If the contract comes back that we need to renegotiate things or we don't feel like that's the avenue we want them going, then we can reconstruct them. But I think we need to ask where they'd like to go with that money from the new programs that we're picking.
I guess I would say the way you explain it confuses me. I would like to make sure that we know before, all I care about is that before there's a contract signed, we know what they're allocated to spend on different items. I want to know before we sign a contract that the 4-H program has the money it needs to be successful. And I want to know that the county is being billed for things it should be, and the WSU is being billed for things it should be.
And I think once you say it's 100,000, we have these programs we'd like to have, then they can do their math for what that costs them or what they're offering, 60-40 split or whatever it is. And then we can go from there and line item other things that we'd like to make sure are set in stone. So it doesn't happen to be just filtering around out in nowhere land again. And it's a void. Well, we can put more detail into it once it comes back because they know what their program costs them.
I get that. I guess I would say that the county, I don't know that has ever had WSU create a budget and hand us their budget request. The county always chooses what it's doing. But if you would like to go the other approach, I'm wide open to seeing the other approach, and we don't need the conversation.
Just to point out numbers, we had an amended budget last year of 134,374. We eliminated the front office position, which with the elimination in the budget of the front office position, salaries and benefits, that brings us right down near the $100,000 that we have allocated currently. Last year, when they did have a front office position at the end of the year, they were spent about $95,800 almost to the end of the year. So the $100,000 that's currently set aside and budgeted, I think is a fair and accurate number currently for that negotiation. I think what we need to do is send, this is what we would like you to provide, and we would like you to, and in that we would like someone locally who's providing WSU extension services. And you know, this is our total budget. So we let them know this is our total budget. We let them know that, you know, this last year, our professional services contract with them was $74,132. That's what we paid WSU. The rest of that was, you know, communications, travel, insurance, repairs, miscellaneous, and all that. With that, you know, the 74,000 plus all the rest of it, that only adds up to $89,857. So with our 100,000, we still have $10,000 in there to massage, in essence, with the new ask that we're asking from WSU. So I would like to see what they come back to us with. And I think that having them, like we do with the conversation we were just having earlier, this is what we would like. You're the contractor. You bring forward what you think you need to spend it on. I think that's the appropriate way to do it. Being that this WSU extension agent isn't going to be working over 2 counties like the previous one did, which always gave.
But we don't know that for sure.
Well, because the other person is still over.
I understand, but we might get a Yakima Klickitat or something. Who knows?
Potentially, yeah. But that's why we say this is what we have to spend. You bring us your idea.
Right. So all I'm asking for is just like this is broken down for 3,200 in office supplies, 2,500 in fuel, small tools, everything else. I don't want to just, here's $100,000. We'll see at the end of the year how much you spent it on what. I would like some numbers if I'm spending $100. So
when we ask
they
them,
recommend it, that's fine.
Right.
That's fine.
Right. They should recommend, and then for our first supplemental budget, that's when we would amend those numbers in there so that whoever starts and is actually working, which we currently don't have anyone, so we should be saving some of that cost for this budget already for the first probably 2 months. Then we can add those numbers in there based on what they bring us as a recommendation.
As I said, if you want to tell WSU we want these services, we have the 100,000 set aside, and have them fill out this whole section in the contract for us to negotiate the contract, that's fine.
So one question I have on top of that is the way I took it is that you were saying you want it almost broken out between WSU extension versus the 4-H program. You would like 2 separate things: travel for 4-H, travel for WSU extension.
That's how it be. Going forward, it has to be, because whoever the new extension agent is will not be Harley's boss. Harley's bills and receipts will have to go through the regional 4-H coordinator. WSU, last I talked to Mr. Gavney, had no intentions of asking for any supplies budget for the extension person, only for 4-H. And that those will be separate because we need to know how much is the 4-H person, and the 4-H person will not have to get authorization from the extension agent, and the extension agent can't spend the 4-H person's budget.
So then that's why having it put on them to bring us that recommendation of how much they think it's going to be for Harley. Then at least we
All
know.
I'm asking for. I thought we were going to come up with that number and tell them, here's what we want. But if you're saying you want them to say what they want, I'm fine with that. I just want the numbers and not a blank check.
Since it's a contractor type position, I think that's what we need to do.
It just hasn't done that way before.
Yeah.
Maybe they don't want to do it that way. I don't know. You'd have to ask.
Okay. Good. I have 4 or 5 bullet points that I'll send to him today, and then I'll let you know when I hear back.
Jen,
Jen. Go ahead, Jen.
Thank you. So if I can have some clarification to it, or maybe if I can read what I wrote down in my understanding of it, and maybe get some clarification from there, and direction. One, I had heard that potentially during this discussion that there was a want to reduce from the 100,000 to lower. But then that got confusing there. So if that's the goal, if I can please have that addressed. And then my understanding from listening to Commissioner Zoller and Commissioner Anderson was that you wanted WSU to outline the programs and then Klickitat County and see what that budget might look like, and then Klickitat County fill in the gaps with our budget. Is that my understanding accurately there?
Well, it sounds like, I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
Go ahead.
Well, it sounds like you have 2 questions, so I'd say take them one at a time. And I'm not sure who said that they wanted to cut the budget, so I'll let whoever said that speak to that question.
Actually, sir, that was the interpretation I got from your first statement, that there was $100,000 for 2 people, and that might not be necessary. So if that's, I can scratch that if that's not what we're looking for.
Well, first off, just for clarification, I'm not looking at cutting anything. I'm looking at getting the right numbers on the right lines.
Okay. Scratch that then.
And have it amenable in our books so we know who's spending what and where. Whatever that dollar number comes out to be, whether it's 5,000 less or 5,000 more, I don't care. I just want to know what it's being spent on.
Okay. And then the other part of it is there seems to be some fixation on the $100,000 and it not being in line items, and maybe some confusion. So I want to touch back on that again. Just because there's, let's say we put, $5,000 in travel and $2,000 in supplies. That does not mean that they can't spend $5,000 in supplies and $2,000 in travel. So although I understand wanting to get the budget line item accurate, and I believe that is the goal of everybody, I want to make sure that the board understands that there's no stopgap on the operating funds at all until it hits the $100,000 bottom line number, not the individual bars numbers.
And I'm fully aware of that they can move all the money around below the payroll line, and they can move money around above the payroll line. They just can't move it from the payroll line to the pencils and papers line. I just want the correct numbers in there so WSU knows what's expected of them in, say, let's call it travel. If we're willing to pay $3,000 in travel, that if they turn in $10,000 of travel, they might have some pushback. I want them to kind of have an expectation, which is what that line item and why I'm asking for that line item.
Anything else, Jen?
Just was my understanding of the board wanting to see what WSU's program outline was, and then Klickitat County would fill in that program outline, fill in the gaps of that with our budget.
I think it's going to be prudent just to reach out to the contractor, say this is the available funds, and we would like to know what your view is on how that will be dispersed for our tracking mechanisms, so we know we stay within those things. So until we hear back from them, I think we're kind of speculating on everything.
Okay. And will I be a part of those emails or get
Sure.
the finals? Oh,
Sure. Be glad to copy you of it.
Okay, great.
That would
And
help. Thank you.
anything else needed from me?
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? No, Jen, no. You're very quiet. No, I think that's it, Jen. Thank you. Okay, anything else for WSU? Okay, moving on to short-term rentals. Excuse me, still stuffed up.
I will gladly step down from this and sit in the audience.
Okay. I think I'm the one that actually asked for short-term rentals to be put on the workshop agenda again. I'm working through several legalities and several questions I have about the short-term rental development for the ordinance, and going back all the way to creation of how this started. I still have a lot of questions about how this all moved forward. And I was left with the advice from someone here at the county that we actually had a resolution from the county commissioners to create a short-term rental ordinance. And I can't find that anywhere. I can't find a lease has looked for me. We can't find where it was a decision of this board to move forward to create that ordinance. So that's one question that I still have to find how this all came about. I know we're hung up in a place with the short-term rental ordinances on some differences with not being able to move forward because of road discussions and some things. Is that correct, Mr. Christopher? Is that where we're at? If you can remind me.
Among other things, I do have concerns of road safety issues, but just to maybe speed up the conversation a smidge, and with full respect to the board, having deliberated on this based on past actions and past communications of this board, I will not and cannot morally or ethically move forward on this topic at this time.
So I think you're right to shortcut this conversation then. If that's where we're at with a board of two, then for now, we just won't take this conversation back up till someday in the future. We'll move back to short-term rental. And I'm good with that. I won't expand on anything else I had then today. Thank you. So Mr. Anderson, you can come back up. That short and sweet. Yep. Nuisance ordinance. Who is the culprit? Oh, we were going to take that.
Yeah, I failed to ask
my morning got away
them
from
to
me.
take it off. That's why I sent you an email that I think the revisions, he took a light approach, you know, I mean, as opposed to a total rewrite. And there's a couple more things that he wants to look at, and I haven't had a chance to review it. And so the main point I wanted is it's not being kicked down the road; it's being worked on, and it's close to coming to you as for your review. So
great, thank you.
Thank you.
That was easy too. So SEPA training. I saw you hiding in the back, Lori. Thank you for coming down.
Oh, you're welcome. And I'm just here and once again, very excited in a couple weeks or 10 days for Scott, our new director, to come. But in the meantime, I just have some basic SEPA kind of information and things that will need to be considered. There's a chart on the back side, or one side of what I just handed you. And that's something Joy Espinosa with the SEPA coordinator for the central region. Basically, she's out of Yakima, that she just gave me some basic information about pre-threshold consultations prior to making a determination. And from that, which obviously you want to read, and I can be quiet for a minute if you'd like to do that, or I'll just continue talking. Go ahead. Okay, so on the other side, just some things to consider with SEPA and the processing. So currently the SEPA fee is $375. And if every SEPA goes through this pre-consultation, it'll likely add up to 3 to 4 weeks with processing of SEPAs and overall permits that are attached to them. Occasionally we'll have a standalone SEPA. And the kind of the big thing time-wise is, will it be published in the local newspaper? Because then having a weekly newspaper, we have to get our notices in like Thursday afternoon to be published the following Wednesday. So that's where some of the additional time comes in. And time is not really the matter. The appropriate review and public input is. So if we do end up publishing, there will be an additional cost to the newspaper. And then that was January 3rd of 2023, our land development fee increase, basically fees were increased based on this ordinance. And part of that ordinance was to establish an amending fees for land development to recover actual costs of staff time and other costs in processing land development applications. So right now our SEPAs, we're given 5 hours of time, and that costs the $375, because that does include the determination notice that is published. So whatever is considered and adopted by the county, we will likely need to amend our land development fees to go along with that, to cover the cost of an additional publication, if that is the direction you want to go, an additional step time. And again, Scott, the new director, will be here in 10 days, give or take, and he'll have more direction on this, but those were the impacts that I could see right away, or, that need to be considered.
If I may.
Please do.
In the SEPA handbook, under consult, a predetermination consult, it mentions agencies.
Right.
Nowhere does it mention the public.
Right. So I did have that conversation with Joy. Actually, I've had many conversations with her in the last couple of weeks. She said with that, the required notice optional, but recommended. And a consult is a record that is available to the public to view and comment along with agency jurisdiction. And it happens prior to the threshold determination being made. But my take on it, it's kind of a discretionary, what the board or the board directs the planning department. So what and who you would want to be involved with the pre-consultation.
And I would also say that your wordage there was perfect. Through all of the video I heard as well, said the exact same thing. It is not required, but it is encouraged, and even used the word strongly encouraged.
So, and again, planning department will take the direction of the board.
Do we consolidate the comment period on SEPA with any of our other comment periods?
What the projects I'm most familiar with, for example, a conditional use or rezone or something, we route it all together, but there's the SEPA comment and SEPA appeal period. And then later on, you would have a public hearing, rezones like before a planning commission, conditional uses before the Board of Adjustment. So there's additional, but then like a lot of our short plats that require SEPA, there's kind of, that doesn't require the public hearing and all. So we kind of need to break it down into which projects.
So if we were a fully planning county, this would be pretty simple because there's an entire flow chart that it goes through. And then there's such thing as the notice of application that goes out. And there's all these
Right.
other pieces that go into it in which we don't have. From my perspective, the WAC and RCW, the goal is to combine the comment periods, because how I felt for a long time is that we go through the first one and it's SEPA, and then you look through the record or the records, and you find that everybody's commenting on the application, not on the SEPA determination. And so people end up appealing the SEPA rather than the actual project. And the reason that we're falling into this trap is because we're not consolidating those public hearings and comment times. By being non-planning, we have a lot of ability to, I think, be a little creative to take the best parts of the fully planning and their ideas so that we can get to a point, because I think when I look at the record, people, the whole purpose of SEPA is not, that is the process. SEPA is the process. And you get to the point of comment, and people are commenting on the application. They're not commenting whether it's a DNS or an MDNS or a DS, which is what they need to be commenting on. They need to be saying, we disagree with your finding, responsible official, that for your DNS, we actually think it needs to be a DS, and for these reasons. But instead, people are always commenting on the actual application and the merits of the application and everything else. And so I look forward to working with our new planning director to ensuring that we can follow the state statute to consolidate as much as possible, so that then when you get that comment period, it's not on, whether or not you did a DNS or a DS, it's actually on the actual application or on both. And I had the question, when we do the comments, they're for just 14 days, right?
Correct.
When I read under RCW 3670B, hold on, 110. Yes, 3670B 110. A local government is not required to provide for administrative appeals. We have chosen to provide for administrative appeals. It came up 2 years ago or last year, I can't remember. If provided an administrative appeal, the project decision, and any environmental determination issued at the same time as the project decision shall be filed within 14 days after the notice of the decision or after the notice that the decision has been made and is appealable. The local government shall extend the appeal period for an additional 7 days if state or local rules adopted to pursuant 4221C allow public comment on a determination of non-significance issued as part of the appealable project permit decision. And what that's saying to me is so we issue a DNS and then we put it out for comment. And then we've heard from the public saying, well, you allowed me to comment, but but I don't know, so I have to appeal. So rather than just commenting, we end up having to appeal. When the way I read 3670B 110, the 14-day comment period, you receive the comments, the responsible official reviews the comments, is not required to respond to the comments, but reviews the comments, and then they can keep it, or they can pull it, or they can go out and ask for clarifications. But after that 14 days, there's an additional 7 days for an appeal. on that SEPA. Do we do that additional 7 days? And is that something that we market?
We do not. And I'm familiar and I've read that RCW, but I really can't comment well on that at this point.
I would get a legal opinion before you comment.
Oh, yes,
Right.
most definitely.
So I guess where I'm going with that is that one of the things may be our internal processes and how we're doing it, which may be creating some of the confusion for the public when it comes to it. Because everybody appeals within the 7, and we just heard it in a public comment too long ago.
Right.
And so I'm just trying, as we're trying to understand it and do our own SEPA training by ourselves to ensure that we can make this process so that it is as open to the public as possible, so that it is fair to all parties involved, and ensure that it's something that people can understand. Because it's been an issue for a long time. I firmly believe that, we never get to actually the merits of the project. We're always playing in the SEPA realm, when SEPA is just supposed to be the responsible official making the determination on whether or not it's a DNS, and an MDNS is technically still a DNS. It's mitigated, but it's still a DNS or a DS. And if it's a DS, it starts the whole process.
But I would add that if the SEPA officials don't mitigate it, and the applicant is complaining about a western gray squirrel nest or something that is actually SEPA related, not project related, that they would like to see some mitigation for that squirrel nest.
That the applicant is?
The commenter. The person that provides comment in the 14-day period after the decision is made, and there was no mitigation in that decision to protect that squirrel nest. I'm just giving you an example. The applicant's like, wait a minute, you didn't take into consideration the squirrel nest. You need to take into consideration the squirrel nest. He needs to know whether the SEPA official is actually going to mitigate for the information. Hey, there's a squirrel nest, before he appeals. But currently, he doesn't have that opportunity because he doesn't know if you're going to mitigate for the squirrel nest or not. So he's going to file the appeal to make sure the squirrel nest is protected. My point is, if you get the comment before the applicant, or not the applicant, but the concerned citizen can look at the SEPA that is actually done by the builder or the applicant and say, they didn't even mention the squirrel nest in that tree. And when you get a SEPA from a developer that wants to cut up their property or something, and you issue, as a SEPA official, and you issue a determination of non-significance, have you toured the property to look and see if there's squirrel nests?
No, planning department does not go out on
So
site.
you're totally trusting the applicant.
No, we also review data, GIS data, and work with state agencies.
Right, but nobody's looked to see if there's a squirrel nest.
Correct.
So if the neighbor says, wait a minute, this application doesn't show the squirrel nest, you might have made, not you did, but you might have made a faulty decision. And we would like you to hear and look at the squirrel nest and potentially mitigate for it. They don't get that opportunity, is my point.
To respond to that, yes, the way that we do it, they would absolutely still have the opportunity, because the whole process for the determination is whether or not there is a determination of significance, which means there's more than a moderate impact to the environment, right?
But you get the mitigated in there too. Maybe they just want to mitigate it.
So, but you also have to think, right? So the mitigated part of that, because what you do is you send it to the agencies. We have our mitigated list that we have, that's just a kind of, on most of them, it's all the same, dust mitigation and everything, because we're not a fully planning county. And that has all been worked out between the agencies, which you're consulting with. You're consulting with the technical agencies for their technical expertise. That's the whole purpose, to make a decision on whether there is a determination of significance or not. The MDNS that we always issue on project-specific actions is the agencies that we've worked out over many, many years saying, these are the base things that we want you to do to ensure that this project is not a determination of significance that needs to go through the full EIS process. Now, if there's a one squirrel or a nest or something that somebody knows, we still have the other part, which is the actual application, which we have a hearing on, well, you know, whether it's a conditional, you know, it'd be a conditional use permit in which the people comment and say, you have a squirrel nest that you need to mitigate for, we would like that mitigated for, and that's something that that board takes under consideration. Do you think that one squirrel nest in the woods is going to be the difference between a determination of non-significance or determination of significance?
But you're skipping the mitigated determination.
So the mitigate, but
well, rather than having in escalating into debate that just goes around in circles, I will just agree to disagree with your rationale. You can agree to disagree with my rationale, and I have nothing further.
So just for clarification for me, what I'm hearing is in the SEPA process, you're asking that it's possibly an error at the point that the SEPA responsible official goes to route that SEPA, that they should route it blank and have those agencies come back in with whether they think it's a DNS or MDS and their reasons why, and not taint that application with the SEPA responsible official's title of this is an MDS. Would you look at it? Is that what you're looking for?
I have absolutely no idea what you're talking about.
Okay. It's just what it
and basically
when the application comes in from the applicant that fills out the SEPA and says that, yeah, no, there's no bald eagles here, there's no salmon in my creek, there's no whatever, and it comes into her to make a decision, and she routes it to the Forest Service and ecology and whatnot, and yeah, some of them might catch, no, there's salmon in that creek, and they may comment to her. I believe that before you make a decision, and I believe we just heard this about 20 minutes ago, that we need all the evidence, we need all the facts before we make a decision. Thought I heard that 20 minutes ago. I'm only asking that you take all the information and you take all the facts, which might be the neighbor on the property that might have information that ecology and the Forest Service and whatnot don't have, and you listen to what they have to say before you make it.
That's what I was saying.
That's all I'm asking.
So again, though, the purpose, you know, you take the public comment after it, and the SEPA responsible officials made a determination of non-significance. The public comment the SEPA responsible official receives, and if the SEPA responsible official believes that that comment is enough to potentially push it into a determination of significance, then the SEPA responsible official pulls it back. If they take the comment and they're like, okay, thank you, we will note in the record, it's in the record now that there's a squirrel nest. Now that will be brought up during the actual conversation on the actual project at that next level.
But then who issues the mitigation? So is it the SEPA official under your scenario, which could work? Under your scenario, is it the SEPA official that issues the mitigation, or is it some people appointed to a board somewhere?
So in that instance, right, if the SEPA responsible official does not believe that it needs to be pushed either back to the applicant to make changes to their application, because you do know, like when staff does look at it to make sure we know where all the squirrel nests are in the county that have been found. And then there's the maps, you know, and the priority habitat species. And if it's the applicant has not mentioned it in their application, staff or the responsible official will always go back and say, hey, you haven't addressed this. Right, as part of your application.
Is what you just said, and I'll go back to my squirrel nest scenario. Not that I'm on squirrels, but that's the rationale. You have a map that lists where all the known squirrel nests are. but you have not surveyed my property to see if there's a squirrel nest, and I'm saying you may not have surveyed the application person's property to see a squirrel nest. So if their neighbor knows there's a squirrel nest in that tree, that tree, and that tree, and this is not only a squirrel nest, but prime squirrel habitat, I would think you would want to know that before you make your SEPA determination, which is the environmental.
So so again, the whole purpose of the SEPA determination is to determine whether it's a determination of non-significance or determination of significance. That's the whole point of it. If so those mitigations can come at that point, which has been, those are the mitigations that have been worked out between the agencies that we kind of stick on all of them. If the applicant or somebody provides information that says there are squirrels everywhere on that property and there is nowhere that you could build or do anything that you want to do because of the 50-foot buffers around all trees, and that's the comment they get, the SEPA responsible official has to make a determination, which they are a professional. They have autonomy from us by being that SEPA responsible official, whether or not to pull that application, to send it back to the owners, or to continue to process the application. If they continue to process the application as a determination of non-significance, that is in essence a staff member who is, or a responsible official who is stating that does not rise to the point of a determination of significance, which then goes through the whole other path in which you would have to look at every single, you would go out to scoping, and then that comment about there being squirrel nests, then the person would comment and say, we would like to see through the scoping process, we would like a full squirrel survey done on that property and everything else. And then you would go through that whole process to ensure that you mitigate for all potential environmental impacts.
Again, I don't want to continue to get into debate that constantly turns into contentious debate, because while the organizational flowchart of how things operate under your scenario is correct, I believe there's other ways as well. So I don't necessarily say the way you're explaining it is wrong, but I would also say that it's not the only way.
So, and I think I understand what you're saying, and I hope I can say it in the same language. And that is the frustration lies in, yes, a SEPA application comes in and the SEPA responsible official opens it up and takes all the information from the applicant and fills out the form that will be routed. From that information, that SEPA responsible official deems, well, what this person told me is this is a MDS. And so I'm going to tag that to that, but then I'm going to send it out to all of my official agencies and everybody to say, DOE, you're specialists in water, you're specialists over here in fish and wildlife. Tell me what you see with what this guy told me. So they do, and it comes back, and then that SEPA responsible person says, oh, man, I didn't know about this one. Well, I better check that box and look into this, and this may potentially change the SEPA application. And there's even been cases where it's been so bad that the application fails and it goes back to the applicant and says, this SEPA is a mess. You got to redo it and come up with some other things if you're going to submit this SEPA. The SEPA responsible official branding that with that name is not a done deal. It's only them telling the agencies, this is what the applicant gave me. And as my expertise here at my county level looking at this, this is what that application looks like to me. What do you think? And that's how that application is being routed and coming back to them.
Okay, so clarification question on what I believe I heard you just say. Feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. You make a determination, is what was said. I believe what was said. You make a determination on a SEPA before you route it to agencies.
That's what we're doing currently.
Preliminary.
Well, we issue the MDNS.
So there's two processes, okay? If it's something simple that we do regularly, that we have created a flow for, where we have, MDNSs, and this is non-project, but project specific. and we receive the application and staff goes through it, and the regular issues that would be to come up on it, like dust. You know, dust is something we don't have an ordinance for. Instead, we use it in the MD&S process. And so when that comes up, we look at the potential on each different thing in there and say, does this create a more than moderate, so a significant impact on the environment? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, then it would be a DS. If the answer is no, then you continue down that process. Then if it's something we don't see very often, or something that's very weird out there that doesn't fall into our usual stuff, staff or the responsible official can initiate a consult with the agencies ahead of making the determination. And there's the list of which agencies you need to talk to according to the WAC for each thing. And you'd send it out there with a timeline and say, hey, I'm not sure if this should be a DS or not because I've never seen it before. Give me your thoughts on it. And so then you could get the consult ahead of time, and then the person would make the determination, and then it would go to the comment period in which the agencies and the public would still have the ability to comment again to determine whether it's a DS or not.
Right, but again, this debate is technically a frivolous debate, because while what you're saying is not wrong, we are having an ideological debate on whether you should listen to all comment before you make a decision or only some comment before you make a decision. That is what we're hearing right now. Staff has already said that you can listen to all comments before you make a decision. And I would, if she has the words that I said, that was excellent wording that she got from ecology, I'm just recommending the same thing, that you listen to all comment. I'm not arguing that your way is wrong. It's a way. There's two paths. Sorry for hitting the microphone. There's two paths you can take. This county chooses path B. I'm only saying for transparency and openness to the public, it might consider path A.
So I'm not saying this is my path. This is on the agenda as a SEPA education that I think we all need to be on the same page about, because I'm looking at this as more than just taking public comment during the consult process. If you go through the consult process, I'm talking about following the RCWs that say we should be consolidating these processes to the most amount, so that when you're giving comment as the public, you're not just giving comment on whether or not it should be a DS or an MD&S, you're actually giving comment on the entire project and ensuring that you can do that. And there is a process through state law in which we can consolidate it, which we are requested to do. And so that's the whole point. I'm trying to ensure that we get to the point where the citizens are not confused, and that it's in the SEPA handbook. It's in the WAC that this has been an issue for a very long time. GMA counties have dealt with it through their process, so that when you're commenting or there's a hearing, you only have one hearing. It's a consolidated hearing, so that we're not playing this, well, which is it, the chicken or the egg, or which one is it?
But I would also add that this county has chosen in some circumstances that when they consolidate a hearing, that it no longer goes before this board and it goes to a hearings examiner. So maybe an applicant would like to appeal a SEPA decision and doesn't want to wait until there's been a project specific decision, because if he knows he's going to try to appeal the SEPA because of a squirrel or whatever, and he waits to do it on the consolidation method, then it goes off in front of him, some hearings examiner that he doesn't know, and not this board.
You can look up the RCWs in the SEPA handbook, and that consolidation is actually what you're required to do when you appeal the SEPA, is you consolidate.
I would imagine at this point that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe this commissioner came to a decision half an hour ago. I believe that commissioner came to a decision a half an hour ago. It would be nice if you still need information, that's fine. But if you're at a decision, we shouldn't be continuing to beat a dead horse.
So I'm going to be the one that kicks the can down the road. And I'm sorry, but we're talking about working processes and processes that we've just hired a new planner. I believe he's working his way through SEPA education. He's reaching out. I've had some conversations with him. We only have 10 days and
counting.
This is his working order. This sets his future tone of that department. And I want to wait to involve Scott in these discussions before I make a decision.
I absolutely agree with that. And no, I have not made any decisions. My point of bringing and doing all the research is so that we can work on ensuring that the process and the system is the most efficient for the applicants, that is the clearest for the public comments, so that people are not commenting at the wrong time on the wrong stuff, and ensuring that we're not overburdening staff at the same time, thus requiring everything to cost more. I know that came up during the conversation on Tuesday night.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I
Critical
believe
areas.
in the person we hired. I believe in his ethics. I believe in his care for the public, and how his processes work are going to reflect on him. So I want to involve him in that process.
I don't necessarily disagree, but we're talking about saving time and saving staff time, which is all the staff in the room currently. And if that was the answer, we probably shouldn't even have the conversation today. We should have waited for all the correct people in the room and
I looked at today as a learning curve. More information is always good for us, so we can communicate with Scott.
Well, and of course, I think civil conversation is always beneficial, because it helps me to now go back and so I can get the answers to the questions you were asking about the consolidation. That's not something I wrote down on my, that I was focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things, if you would like, so a little bit of homework to look at is the notice of application process that fully planning counties have. And we can't adopt that because we're not fully planning, but we can definitely create our own internal processes that may mimic it in a way.
Okay, and I'm sure we're going to have a lot of talks with him.
Perfect.
Going forward. And I appreciate that. And thank you for your help, Lori.
Oh, you're welcome.
And your
certainly
due diligence. And
have more questions.
I learned a lot in the last 2 weeks, and I'm glad you've connected with your lady at DOE. That's been a great help.
And I'm very happy that for all you've done, and for the fact that in another 10 days, you don't have to deal with this anymore.
Yeah, you do. You're still up there.
Yeah.
You don't have to come in here and deal with this
anymore.
anymore.
Right.
More important.
The front man.
So it's all good.
Yeah.
And planning will go on.
And I wasn't trying to put you on the spot.
Oh, no, that's okay. But when you read that whole long RCW, I was just like, oh, word. Okay. I need a copy before I comment.
Well, and you need a legal opinion of the reading of anything like that before you comment. So, yeah.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you again, and have a good day.
You too. Bye. See you later.
Okay. Thank you.
Motor pool. Would you like to? Okay.
I think I'm just moral support.
Yes, you are. I like my spot over there better than right here.
Welcome to the hot seat.
Yeah, I don't like it. Okay, I just wanted to give you guys an update on the motor pool. So currently we have 5 vehicles in the motor pool. 2 of them are pretty much permanently checked out right now by code compliance and health department. Well, environmental health, because both of their cars have currently died. Elisa hasn't really talked to.
Have we officially removed the one for senior services from motor pool and put it in senior services?
Yeah.
Do you know how many we actually started with at the beginning? Is that now 8 then?
6.
6 at the start.
Yeah, because we have 5 now.
Okay, got it.
So as of May, until the current, December of last year, we had 31 total checkouts. Right now, code compliance is using the 15 Ford Explorer that we have here. And then of course, health department is using the 15 Explorer in White Salmon. So we had the vehicles checked out by the shop, I think in July, and we had ran across a problem with the 2015 Explorer here in town that the computer is not reading or it's not working. So what we had proposed to code compliance, that maybe they would want to take that car over instead of having to purchase another one, because we had kind of talked about surplusing that one anyway because of the computer issue. But we also proposed to Rob that we do have $8,000 in our motor pool budget. If we took the car to the actual dealership and seeing if they could see what was really wrong with it and if it's even worth fixing, we would fix it for code compliance and then they would take it over.
Because I think Public Works looked at it and determined something's unplugged.
Something's unplugged.
It's not communicating. But,
beyond their.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't, nothing against Public Works, but that doesn't shock me.
So George does need a rig and he goes places. So I know I think Commissioner Christopher suggested he can get the van or something. But, you know,
I did joke about giving him the minivan,
but it wouldn't go.
This comes down to getting full knowledge as well. So as some people may not understand in the room, I am an ASE certified master technician. So it would be nice to actually know a professional diagnostic before I made a decision.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can't imagine that many of the people, again, not a slight on Public Works, are Ford certified like I am. So I would like to hear from the professionals.
And I think that's what they were proposing, is the dealer should do a diagnostic and it's unplugged, you know, the connectors, or there's a bad pin or something.
Is that
oil in a mass airflow sensor?
Yeah.
That's a Ford Explorer.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what's unplugged?
Well, when they put in the diagnostic, they're not getting a reading.
OBD2 connector.
Yeah, that.
Nothing to do with exhaust or fumes?
No.
It's
Okay.
plug under the dash.
Yeah, it works
That
totally
was my
fine. It's
concern.
just not registering anything.
Okay.
The OBD2 is not registering anything on your scan tool at all?
I don't think so.
So the check engine light's on, but the OBD2.
I don't know.
No, there's no check engine light.
Which is part of the problem. They're maybe not sure if there should be one on.
Right, and that's why we wanted to get it checked out before we offered it to George to see if it's even salvageable.
But how do you know it's not reading things then?
Because Public Works had put it, we had sent it to them to look.
Any other decision other than getting this to a dealer to investigate before we just put it on an auction block?
Because otherwise it's a structurally sound vehicle and George has been driving it and it's the type of vehicle that he needs. He doesn't need a new one. It's only got 60,000 miles on it.
Yeah.
So it's got plenty of miles.
I mean, they only should need an hour of diag to diag it. And I am fine with, rather than towing it over there, having George drive it over there and do some paperwork for an hour while he's sitting in their lobby, and get us an answer.
The way we found out about it was because the fleet software, the IT department was trying to install the fleet software in the 2015 wouldn't acknowledge it. And so that's when we consulted with Public Works and they took a look at it. The shop here in Goldendale took a look at it and they.
But no runability problems and no check engine light.
No, it runs totally fine.
I have my suspicions.
So is there a threshold where if he gets there and they say, oh, we can fix that for, you know, a couple $100 and do it while you're here, or do you want to hear about it before any money's spent to fix it, or if it's a reasonable amount?
I can't imagine if it's anything over $100 or $200 that he's going to have to bring it back and schedule an appointment kind of thing anyway.
Okay.
I mean, it might be something that say, yeah, hey, by the way, we saw this connector. It's not making good connection and we need to put some electronic grease in there and, you know, it's going to cost you a half an hour. Well, okay. but you know.
And we'll still need to talk to Jen because the car that he had that died does have a VR&R account and the rental rate. So we'd have to move this car and Jen would have to.
I already have her looking because we still don't know the answer of, you know, if we put $30,000 in a VR&R for this car, but we're not replacing this car, we're junking this car. What do we do with the 30 grand?
Right.
So we're still on this finding through the treasurer if we can put that on a different car, if that stays in a balance fund, or we're not taking it out, but what we do with it. But yeah, that's still being researched.
Are we good to go? At least to have it diagnostic.
I'm impressed that it even got before us. I figured you would have went over and diagnosed it.
Oh, well, you know, we want to.
I guess from my perspective, we've had the software now in all these vehicles for quite some time, but we've never heard an update on, you know, what are we getting for our money on this software and what have we learned and what lessons do we have?
Right, Candy, what?
And an update on it.
I knew I shouldn't have come in today.
Yes, I agree.
Wanted a $200 question, you're going to get a more expensive answer.
I think some of the software hasn't been in as long as we think it has. But I think minimum, I can't imagine anybody wouldn't agree that us switching to this motor pool fleet, whatever you want to call it, has found us that we did have some cars that weren't being used.
Yeah, I think that's
and we did have some cars that we can not replace.
Right.
And we can find some cost savings for the county. So I think it was a good
find it small. I was looking at the landfill compliance officer has it on his vehicle. He had taken it in for some minor things, and I was looking at it, and it just always interests me. You know, tells how many miles it's got, how much fuel's in the tank. You know, any engine lights come on. I mean, you know, it gives you quite a bit of information just on the status of the vehicle, which I think
how fast they're driving, how fast they're braking.
So, but we'll take a look at that. So, thank you, Jake.
And then the other part is, so you talked a little bit about the motor pool, but what about the rest of them? Are they getting pulled out very often, or are they all sitting there, or what do we got for numbers?
So, our most checked out is the 2017 Ford Explorer. It was checked out 15 times. The Chevy Traverse 4 times. The Ford Explorer, now that George is driving, was only checked out 4 times. The Dodge Caravan was checked out 5 times, all by WSU.
In how long a period of time again?
This was from May 19th to November 2nd of 23.
So a good 6 months.
Yeah, and like I said, the 2 now that we have checked out full time since the 1st of January have been the 2 for health department and.
And to answer your other question, Commissioner, I think the reason we're bringing it to you is because we're taking potentially rigs out of the motor pool, and that's not a decision we felt we could make. We need.
But that's where I'm glad she brought the data in to show that these were rigs that were not getting used, whether they're in our motor pool or in some department somewhere. That I always kind of assumed as we get through this a year or so, we're going to find that we got 2 or 3 rigs that need to hit the auction block. It's nice to be able to transfer them into a department, get them off the fleet roster and not have to buy a new one.
What I don't know is if there's a correlation between so I think the first thing we were looking at is if the vehicles weren't being used by the departments, would they be used in the pool? And we're seeing they're not used in the pool. So were they in fact, you know,
used in the department in the first
place?
Right.
But has there been an increase in personal mileage reimbursements? I don't know if folks are using cars and they're just using their own, getting reimbursed for mileage as opposed to.
Like I said, but these are only the cars that we said based on our budget book, which we see the car and it put on 3,000 miles last year or 1,500 miles last year, that I was able to get a second vote to pull that car out of that department and put it in the fleet program so we can keep an eye on it. I would suspect that there's a few more vehicles running around that are not in our fleet department that probably don't move forward.
And the other question is, because I think Sharon has always got a car that's not to be replaced, you know, kind of and now code compliance will be the same way. So I think do we assume that they'll always be,
or we'll figure it out at the time. Yeah. I would imagine whatever VR&R, if he takes over this Explorer, and that's the board decision on whether he does or not, I would say we would continue whatever VR&R we're putting in, whatever savings we're putting in on for this Explorer. So when it does blow up, there's a VR&R to replace this Explorer. Now, there may be another spare car that he gets at the time. We don't know. But for now, yes, I want to continue the VR&R that we're currently doing on the Explorer just to make sure that we.
And back to the other question, there's VR&R in the car that died, so they get combined, they get left separate.
I'm sure there's a fund in there that's a little excessive fund, and we need to figure out what we want to do with that. Whether we want to take a year off of putting money in and use fund balance, or whether we want to use that for maintenance and repair, the fund balance that's accrued over the last 20 years of not replacing cars, and use that for repairs and maintenance and quit putting line item repair and maintenance in each person's budget. We'll have that discussion when we know the math of how we can do it.
I would tend to agree with Commissioner Christopher. We still have some room, I think, for efficiencies. The way I test is after the snows, how many vehicles still got snow on the windshield and for how long? And I think we know that there's still some room to save some money, because the money that goes into VR&R still comes out of the general budget, and we're looking for everything we can. One of those, I was looking at is there's a sheriff's patrol car over there with a flat tire. And I don't know if the community thinks that looks very good, and it'd be great to see some movement there. I know it's not underneath you guys, but
And I have brought that up a few times.
Oh, you have? Okay. Well, thank you.
Because I was thinking maybe that was available for George, because I didn't realize if, it was ready for auction or surplus or something.
Yeah, I'm not exactly sure if it's a surplus or it's a backup that just hasn't moved.
Yeah, and I don't know either. So, but they said it wasn't available.
So it ain't moving with that flat tire, so.
And they've been flat for a month or more.
Okay, are we good?
So the decision about whether to move it would be based on whether it's a car worth moving, correct? And then we'll come back.
I think more often, I'm not worried about it. You're more often than not, you're going to find out that the main instrument panel harness has been somehow disconnected from the OBD2 harness, and they need to put some dielectric grease in there, plug it back in. You're $35 and you're done.
So he'd better not have it towed over there, I think.
Well, that's what I said. It's an $800 tow bill.
The one that died,
That's, yeah.
he found a way to get it to the shop without having it towed, because he remembered the $1,000 tow bill from the last time, and he wasn't. So.
And you can tell him I noticed that, and I very much appreciate it. So yes, if I got to pay him 3 hours of labor to drive down there, I'm fine with it.
I think he made a comment like he'd have pushed it himself. It was going to be $1,000.
Said he knows how cheap I am.
So anyway.
Okay, I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners.
Right.
Thank you, Leah.
Anything else for you guys?
Oh, I have a smidge of an update if you want it.
Sure.
I meant to bring it up weeks ago, probably 2 weeks ago, maybe. Yeah, probably it would have been 2 weeks ago, and I forgot. I get a random call out of the blue, and I don't have the name and the phone number in front of me. But it was a corporate guy that runs the City of the Dalles wastewater treatment center, and he also runs, they also run multiple wastewater treatment centers up and down the gorge. That heard that we were going to be potentially going out to an O&M on our treatment center. We did not get into the nuts and bolts of anything other than the fact that currently the board is looking at potentially going out to an O&M contract, and that he should contact Jeff Hunter to make sure he's in the loop if and when the board does such a thing. And that was about the end of that discussion. I just wanted to make sure you were aware there was potentially another candidate interested in the O&M discussion of the wastewater treatment center.
And I know this is ongoing, and I'd heard of one out of Oregon, a different one out of Oregon as
this
well.
one, yep, this is in Oregon, but I guess they run some stuff up here too, but.
CH2 Hill, they're the ones that do Hood River, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just
I
thought I'd mention there's some competition.
Yeah, there is. Mr. Anderson?
Seems I spent all day yesterday working on SEPA stuff, so I've been, let me see what else is on the. No, I don't have any other updates.
Mr. Van Cleve, did you want to closed session for any reason? You're good? Nope. I do not. Okay. I'm good. We'll close till this evening.
Well,
Recessed.
no, it's a different organization.
That's true.
So, Madam Chair, I would make a motion to adjourn the regular meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, noting that the board will be attending the special meeting of Klickitat this evening at 6 p.m. Anyone that's online who would like to attend, we will be using our regular Zoom link. There should be a hot link as well on the county website.
Okay, so I will second with the also information. It will be in this room for the few people that want to attend in person, but it will be majority Zoom. That's my second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Hearing none. I didn't ask for further discussion. Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I didn't ask you, Lynn, you're sightseeing today? You'll be sorry. Thank you for being here.